I'm going to show you some examples of converting fractions to decimals. Now, when we've talked about fractions in the past, we've also talked about how they are also a division problem. This is really 1 divided by 2. Even though it looks like 1/2, 1 being the numerator, 2 being the denominator, but this can also be read as a division problem. And in this case, the numerator becomes the dividend, and the denominator becomes the divisor. These are terms that we've used in the past when we talked about whole numbers and dividing. So if we rewrite this so that we can convert it to a decimal, it's going to look like this. The dividend goes underneath the symbol 1, and the divisor is always on the outside. Now 2 does not go into 1, so I want to add a decimal point and then bring that up and then add a 0. 2 goes into 10. Notice I'm ignoring that decimal point once I've written it down. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10. Sometimes we write it with a 0 in front of the decimal if you don't have a whole number here, and that's okay. So 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10. Let's try a few more. 3/4. Well, as a division problem, that's 3 divided by 4. 4 does not go into 3 evenly, so I need to add a decimal point, bring it up, and then add a 0. 4 goes into 30 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. So I'm going to take the difference. Notice that my difference is not a 0. So I need to add another 0 and bring it down and see how many times 4 goes into 20. It's going to go in 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. So my difference is going to be 0. I can stop here. So 3/4 is equivalent to 75 hundredths. Let's try 1/10. 1 divided by 10. 10 does not go into 1, so write down my decimal and bring it up, and then add a 0. 10 goes into 10 one whole time, and that's going to give me 10. Notice my difference brings me to 0. I can stop. So 1/10 is equivalent to 1/10. Let's look at 1/3. 1 divided by 3. 3 does not go into 1, so I'm writing down my decimal point, bringing it up, and then adding a 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. When I take away 9 from 10, I'm going to get 1 left over. I need to add a 0 and bring it down. Notice I get 10 again, and that's what I had originally. I'm going to continue to get 3's. And my remainder will continue to be a 1. Now, this is a repeating decimal. This means that this decimal is going to be followed by 3's to infinity. We can use a bar above the first 3 to denote that 1/3 is repeating. That bar tells us that following this decimal, all the digits will be 3s, and it will not end. The decimals that we looked at beforehand all ended. These are called terminating decimals. At some point after the decimal, the digits stop. In this case, there's 1. In this case, there's 2 decimals, or decimal numbers, and then here we also have 1. We'll have, there's lots of examples where you're going to have a lot of digits following the decimal point, but they're still going to be terminating because at some point they're going to end.